With the grooming gang pipeline in the UK, there was obviously a sort of plan, intention, like we are going to begin using these young women as economic assets. We're going to go out and find them. But the same general dynamic happened organically. Like the women in this case found the EA community, you know, they selected into it, but the same dynamic started to play where they essentially first got love bombed and they were vulnerable and they were kind of disassociated from their home community at that point, distinct from the rest of society. They fell into this community and then they started getting passed around.
Butters, do you have a problem?
All these are kissing fellers, and they haven't figured out that they can be making some serious money.
And it creates these giant black holes in their resumes. Where for
Oh
years,
no, right, if you have this big employment gap.
Yes, and that's why they get trapped, because now they can't do anything else. And now the type of guy who wants a long-term partner doesn't want to marry them. I'd point out, none of this happens intentionally. This is basically the story of the EA community as it relates to women.
In an effort to raise money, came up with a nifty plan where she'd date guys and charge them money.
I go on dates all the time with a whole bunch of, boys and stuff. And I kind of need somebody to help me out, like, my partner in crime.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brad. She said she needed my help to make sure that the dates went okay and that the guys paid her.
Oh my God, you were a pimp.
What? God, no. No, I was just trying to help a friend. And wouldn't you know it, some of Brenda's girlfriends decided they wanted to be a part of it. We decided I shouldn't use my real name. So we came up with the name Gator.
I'm telling you, you were a pimp.
No! Are you even listening to the story?
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone! I have had my perspective changed pretty dramatically on polyamory recently, the effective altruist community / the rationalist community / the singularity community, because they sort of all come together into this Silicon Valley diaspora community, or wider sort of Silicon Valley. I don't know what you want to say at the heart of the Silicon Valley ecosystem at the moment. And it's been pretty dramatic because I used to have this perspective of being okay with sex work more broadly.
Okay.
Not religiously speaking. I'm just legally speaking. Okay.
Legally. Wow. Okay. Where are we going with this? I'm so
curious. What I mean is, I think that all of this stuff is against the Bible. I think it is against what you're supposed to do. But
right. But if you don't follow the Bible or any other religion that's against it, you still think this is not.
Even legally, it might make sense to make this stuff illegal.
So just because basically logistically, it produces bad outcomes from on a societal level, on a personal level.
Deleterious outcomes for many of the people or most of the people involved in a way that they would want at the end of the pipeline to be like, I wish I had never gotten into the beginning of that pipeline. In the same way drugs or gambling might create that scenario for an individual. But even more dramatically, it changed my view on polyamory.
Hey.
Which I used to be pretty okay with. If people don't know polyamory, this is where you take multiple other partners, most partners just sort of sleep around.
Well, no, not necessarily. Someone who's polyamorous just isn't exclusively romantically attached to people. So maybe one partner is monogamous and the other one's polyamorous. And as long as the monogamous partner consents to the polyamorous person having other partners, then it's still a functional relationship. It's not like everyone in a polyamorous relationship has to sleep around a ton.
Yeah, true. You could have one person sleep around a ton. And there are forms of polyamory that I'm still okay with.
Really? Oh, okay. Wow. So this is very intriguing.
Very spicy, yes.
Oh,
We
yes.
actually talked in a previous video about how a style that some women have used to secure high quality mates that we have seen be successful is to propose polyamorous relationships that were married relationships, and then use that to get the guy to marry them, have kids with them. And then as the guy got older, he stopped caring about sex with other random people.
There you
because
go.
As somebody was saying in the Discord, non-reproductive sex gets gross when you get older. And I hate to say it, kind of does.
Well, I don't know. Does non-reproductive sex with a 20-year-old get grosser, Malcolm? Or is it just with older women? Because
Oh, that's an interesting point.
I mean...
If I had a stable of 20-year-olds, I'd have a stable of 20-year-olds, which I need. Can we work on that for when I'm dictator? Hey, I'm not. Oh my God, there's such a funny video. So Freedom Tunes does these great shows. We inject them in our videos all the time. They did one recently where the Democrats were trying to run a scam on old people to get the money that they used to be getting from USAID. And one of them gets to the place and somebody takes the phone from the old woman and he's like, who is this? Is this you, Chuck Schumer? And it's pretty clear into it that it's Elon Musk. And he goes, if I catch you here again, I'll impregnate you.
Oh my God.
That is, I want that to be Elon's stereotypical like attack on people now. You come here again and I'll knock you up, you fat bastard. You wrinkly old piece of whatever. So anyway, point being, I need to make that my thing. Like, but I can't do that because I'm like with a woman who I love and like I'm not known for knocking up random people. Give me $1 billion and I might change my tune on this, right?
Oh my God. All I'm saying is I think that people can find sex to be arousing in the right scenario. And I imagine, your point there. But
so the point here I'm making, EA to sex worker pipeline, because it's a real thing and I didn't realize it.
Okay. Wow. That is EA. I mean, EA and rationalism more broadly too, in Silicon Valley culture are all associated with very like cerebral, intelligent, thoughtful, altruism focused, not like where's the sex and debauchery?
Come on, you remember the first time I took you to like singularitarian or rationalist or less wrong party, right? So
yeah, it was at some house called Tortuga, right?
Yeah, and I was El Tortuga, and I was like, all these parties have orgies in them, right? And you're like, no, they don't. Look, it's just a bunch of nerds. And I was like, go open that door. And you're like, oh, okay.
I didn't open that door. No, what happened was we went, and it was like a normal, I mean, of course, frumpy house because it's in the Bay Area, and all the houses in the Bay Area, pretty much, unless they're like,
all of them.
Just very sad. And we went there and we talked to people, and at some point, someone was like, do you want to switch outfits with me? And I thought that was a weird question. And then when we left, you were like, that person was inviting you to an orgy or something like that. And I was like, I have no idea what. And
I literally remember opening a door. That's something I don't forget.
I didn't open it. Well, okay, keep in mind, like maybe I have some kind of like selective blackout. I went to Burning Man and have no memory of being exposed to any sex or drugs. Okay. Like I may just not, I like literally like a muggle and magic. Like,
okay, well then, okay, as an outsider here, EA, the effective altruism community, and the larger, like less wrong community and everything like that has always been intimately connected with both partner sharing, polyamory, and orgies.
Is it sort of like a futuristic advanced vision? Because part of me thought that all of the sexual weirdness of the Silicon Valley movement really had to do more with the San Francisco associations. I mean, that is where
that's part of it. So this stuff isn't that radical for them. But this community is very much about like first principles, thinking through why they do things.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like, okay, from a logical perspective, if it feels good for you and it feels good for somebody else, why wouldn't you do it? Right? That's the way they're going to think about it. And then when they think about relationships, they're going to think, okay, why do you have one partner, right? Is it about jealousy? Is jealousy a positive emotion? That's the way they're going to engage with these ideas. So it only makes sense. It would actually be even weirder if they went into it from a monogamous perspective as a default. And all of this makes sense when you think about it from the outside. And then as to why so many people are drawn into it, even when they otherwise might not be, you've got to keep in mind why girls in the community get drawn into it, right?
Okay.
Girls in this, rationality, singularitarian, less wrong community make up the vast minority of the community. I'd say they're probably 1 in 8 members or 1 in 10 members.
Right. Like it's a mostly male community.
Actually, I go so far as to say they make up like probably like 1 in 8 members, and a good 30 to 40% of the girls I've seen in the community are trans women.
Yeah, there's disproportionately more trans women. And there
now
are very
the number
few
has increased. I'd say because of trans women, it might be like 2 in 8 or like 3 in 7, knocking the number up.
It can't be that there's almost an equal number of women to trans. I would say there's almost one trans woman for every natal woman. At like some conferences we've been to, for example.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll put the trans women in a different bucket and bring them in a second, because when I first got involved with these communities, trans women were not on the scene yet.
Yeah.
And they didn't really play into the dynamic, but then they did later. We'll get into that in just a second. So anyway, because of this, you as a woman in this community have a much higher value than you would in almost any other culture.
Oh.
You can be frumpy and fat or, lazy or whatever.
Not saying that people in the EA movement, actually, like, I think it attracts pretty attractive people. But
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot
like
of them are actually more on the attractive side that I've seen,
Yeah.
actually. But if you are attractive, oh my God, you're treated like a god queen by all of the. Well, and keep in mind, the guys in the community are often very different from the girls in the community. To get in the community and earn status as a guy, you either have to move up one of the peerage networks, which means gaining access to funding streams, which then you can redirect to people below you in the peerage network, or you have to be a competent tech worker, which means you're typically making a pretty decent salary.
yeah.
I'd say the average salary in the movement is probably these days at least $500,000. Keep in mind they're living in like San Francisco and Manhattan mostly, so they might not be.
Yes,
living
you'd never know. They look like they're poor.
Yeah. So anyway, you have all these guys in the movement who are earning tons and tons of money, and then the women in the movement, even when they are well, they're not often programmers. They're often like psychologists or neuroscientists or evolutionary biologists, which are all positions that, sound super hard and everything like that, but they don't actually earn much money. And it's quite hard to find jobs for them. And so you get into this community where your knowledge is respected, you are respected, and you can gain even more respect for sleeping with additional people. Because if you're only sleeping with one guy, that causes problems in the community, right? Because there's only one woman for every like 3 or 4 guys, right? So if you sleep around, you can gain status. And then what happens is, you're living in a city like San Francisco now, you're living in a city like Manhattan now, you can't really earn money with your evolutionary bio degree. You can't really earn money with it. Like a neuroscience degree is actually quite hard. I have a neuroscience undergraduate degree. It's actually quite hard to earn money with. You can't. No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's your psychology degree or whatever, right? And so, some of the guys start to take pity on you, and they'll give you money for sleeping with them, and they'll let you stay at their place, which are usually pretty nice or interesting group houses. And so you slowly work your way into this.
Oh no.
Don't you want to start making some money? Leave me alone. Well, you were made for the playground. You should be out there working. Don't you want a new lunchbox? Nice new coat? I can get all that for you.
Butters, dude.
Oh. Well, all I'm saying, the should be out there working is all. What you doing? Just giving kisses to stand for free? You should be making money.
And it's very hard to not work your way into this. This is where I went from, is this something that people are truly open-mindedly consenting to, or is it not? Because before I had this perspective of, yes, but the women who are engaging with this community are consenting to a polyamorous lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I have seen women enter the movement who are more monogamous. So I'll note a few things. The women I have seen engage with the movement who are monogamous are constantly pressured to sleep with other people.
Are they? So what does that look like? Because I just don't understand how the leap goes from being monogamous to being polyamorous within the movement. And when you said that, you can gain status by sleeping with even more people, that runs against, I think, both my and most people's intuition, because the mainstream.
Yeah, we'll talk about how the gain status
on more partners is slut-shaming. Like, you lose value when you are less exclusive as a woman on average. And it's weird that one community would like defy these laws of nature.
So let's talk about why this happens.
Okay.
So first, what does it look like to have your boundaries pushed? What happens is a lot of men in the community, if you say I'm monogamous or something like this, they really take that as so I'm not supposed to tell your partner about us sleeping together. That's what that means to them. And because other women have said that to them in the movement and, not been actually monogamous, and it's happened enough, they now just don't sort of respect those words very much and will be fairly aggressive with people because it's what's expected. I mean, this is the way things work. If you expect to be able to do something, you're going to keep pushing for it. Like, why are you being weird about this? Why are you acting like a weird conservative Christian? People in our community don't do this. And I remember within the community, even thinking that the people who didn't sleep around the women specifically, that were the only ones I was thinking of who were more monogamous, I remember thinking they were really weird.
You?
Yeah, I was like, this is like, why are they like doing this? And then the interesting thing is, and this always happened, is after one of the ones who was like monogamous broke up with their partner, then they become polyamorous.
Oh, wow. Oh, because there were like a bunch of people simultaneously lined up. Okay, because that was another thing. I was like, how would your existing incoming monogamous boyfriend ever be okay with you becoming poly? But yeah, relationships, especially when you're younger, are more likely to end. And then what happens?
Yeah, so you enter the community as a girl in a monogamous relationship often, and you may not go out of that relationship or anything like that. But when that relationship breaks up, you've been going to enough parties, you've been being hit on by enough people.
And maybe it even starts off as like you're contextualizing it as a rebound, like, oh, you're just having some fun one night stands, you know, to mend your broken heart after leaving, you know, a
And these
2-year
guys
relationship.
are doing all the stuff for you your boyfriend used to do. They're paying for meals, they might be paying for some of your
Yeah,
stuff.
those one night stands turned into, you know,
But
every other night for a while. And
they don't expect fidelity from you because they're sleeping with other women as well.
yeah.
So you've had these guys hitting on you. You're not used to this, but you're like, oh, okay, like you've been very interested in me for a while. Like, let's hook up. Oh, this seems like a normal relationship. There's been some other guy who's been hitting on me. Like, am I allowed to like see him on a date tomorrow or whatever? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, you know, we bang the same chicks all the time, right? You know, because they have disintermediated, and it's seen as negative within these communities to feel jealousy. Like that would be like, why are you hoarding this resource, this woman, from other members of the community when we just want to use her for pleasure and it feels good for her too, and you know, blah 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 blah, right? And she's getting money from it, and it's not like she has a job right now. So it when you disintermediate a monogamous relationship, even if it is done on good terms, you turn the relationship into sex work. And then you can't leave because you're stuck in San Francisco, you're stuck in Manhattan, you haven't had a job in how many years? And let me explain what I mean by this. Okay, me and you early in our relationship, I was like paying for you to go to college with my job, right? And I paid for food and everything like that, right? You know, there was a time in our relationship where I was the guy who was earning the money because I had the higher paying career, not anymore, but this is the way it worked, right? And a venture capitalist at the time. And that is a normal monogamous relationship in a lot of places around the world, right? Now, where money sort of flows from the wealthier partner to the less wealthy partner, and often that's from the male to the female, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's monogamy, right? Like that's something I can invest in and continue to build. But
Yeah.
let's like disintermediate that relationship. Now it's you and you're getting the same benefit, but from 5 different guys.
Right. Yeah. Supporting my room and board, etc.
Yeah, maybe they're doing a little less than I would do, but
Yeah, it seems odd. Like, why would you invest in someone if they're so fluid in your life?
This is the point here. You are getting income.
Oh, it's becoming transactional.
And you are getting, yes, but you are not getting a real investment. These guys don't care that you continue to build your career. They don't care about investing in you as an asset because, say it with me, we've done another video on this, you need to own your wife. You need to own your husband. When I say own, what I mean is when somebody doesn't own a property or something like that, they don't invest in this. This is what we've seen in communist countries. Why properties are
the incentives are misaligned. You're not going to take care of that thing.
Well, yes, and it's because you don't benefit from that thing improving. It was sent to us by one of our fans, a green text post on 4chan recently about a guy and his wife who he had known since they were kids and had flirted with him since they were kids.
Oh.
And they went through and read her diary about like when she first met him. And so she's reading it. It's very funny. It's mostly kid stuff. And then she gets like quiet when reading it. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna she goes on. She's not gonna hide this from him, but it's the first time she met him, and he goes, and he's really nerdy. So I bet he'll be rich one day. I should date him. And then he like thinks back to her always pushing him to get like the higher earning degrees, her always pushing him to like study more. And he ends up this very successful guy. And he's quite happy with his life. He doesn't like hold this against her. But the point here being is because they were in a monogamous relationship, she, from a Machiavellian standpoint, from a self-interested standpoint, had a reason to try to improve him.
Yeah. She invested in him, believing him to be an appreciating asset that she hitched herself to.
Exactly. And the women who are in these situations, they don't understand that these guys might have an emotional relationship with them, right? Even an emotional relationship, if they even do. Now, a lot of them don't, right? Like a lot of them, when a person I was talking to about this said, you know, you think you're getting more love, but you're getting no love at all. You think you're getting more people caring about you, but at the end of the day, it's all hollow. And that is, you know, our biology is not meant to bond to somebody who we know that other people are sleeping with. Like that's just
it would
natural.
be
Not as much
for use of resources. Yeah.
For females, and I think this is where women get tricked. Women can bond to somebody who's sleeping with other women. This is the type of polyamory where I'm actually okay. Like if you're a rich enough guy and you have like multiple female partners, like whatever. Throughout all of society, throughout all of history, even in the most monogamous countries in history. I keep mentioning like Louis XIV's, like France, like Catholic country there, the height of the church. You still have regular mistresses and stuff like that.
So you wouldn't encourage our daughters to be polyamorous, but sister wives to a sufficiently wealthy husband, fine.
Yeah, if they're marrying a multi-trillionaire or billionaire, I'm assuming money continues to debase. Somebody who owns like half a Bitcoin. Sorry, I'm joking.
Yes, sure.
But the point here being is that I'm like less like it intrinsically doesn't work in those scenarios, and it can allow women to get higher quality husbands than they otherwise would. So I don't necessarily disagree. I would have significant caution around it in these scenarios, significant caution, but I wouldn't like absolutely rule it out. But in the other way, one girl sleeping with like this destroys things. Oh, it just because it destroys this investment incentive, it destroys the core of the relationship. But I want to talk about how women gain status by sleeping with additional partners, because this is also
because again, this seems so counterintuitive. How can this be the case?
Okay, so because there is an expectation of polyamory in these communities, right? And even more than that, an expectation of polyamory. If I am a guy who holds some status over another guy, I have an expectation of access to his partners. So suppose you're at whatever EA peerage network or whatever, and there's a guy who's upstream in the peerage network of me. My grants, my loans depend on him. And we're at a party or something like that, right? That guy is going to expect to at least be able to hit on without consequences whoever I am with. Speaking of this, we got an email recently from one of our fans in the EA community, and he said, regarding your comments on sex work in EA, I heard a story related to the life extension organization SENS that I consider adjacent to EA. Yeah, anything in life extension is basically part of this larger community. The founder, Audrey Day Gray, was voted out of the organization for interfering with a sexual harassment investigation against him. In particular, what stood out to me was one case of the harassment was him allegedly pressuring young women into making sexual/romantic advances towards potential wealthy donors as a fundraising strategy. I also remember hearing a very similar story about this, about that EA cult leverage. And what leverage, one of the people who was funding it, and he was like, yeah, at one point, they basically came up with a scheme, which he was not into at all, by the way. He's like, what are you guys doing? Where they would brainwash young women and then try to pimp them out to the people who were giving them money to get more money. Now, the way that they worded this is that they would do some sort of like work with the person, that they would go in and they had reframed this not as sex work, but as some sort of like psychological session or something like that. But it's what it boiled down to. So this is something I know that in at least 2 occasions it's like allegedly been tried. Now, suppose you're that woman, right? And this guy is hitting on you. It creates hypergamy and steroids because you have removed from the culture any cultural penalty to sleeping around. But if I start to sleep with this guy who's higher in the net, now suppose this guy has a lot of money. Suppose he's got like $250 million or $500 million, or suppose he runs one of the largest organizations in the space. By sleeping with him, I can significantly increase the type of parties I'm getting invited to. I can significantly increase the introductions I'm getting. I mean, keep in mind, this is how Kamala Harris got her career started, right? Remember, she was sleeping with that guy when who was in his 60s, when she was in her late 20s.
Oh gosh.
And he got her those early jobs, and he admits to this, right? You can move up really quickly as a woman when you're sleeping with people and there's no cost.
Well, yeah, if someone has an interest in opening doors for you, and especially if your career or work or ability to fundraise is contingent on your access to social networks, I could see that being.
But now you can't stop sleeping around, right? Because you are now in a peerage network, which I call it a cult, whatever you want to call it, where polyamory is expected. And you are now, they don't frame it this way, even in their own heads, until they get out of it. And this is the thing I've noticed about this pipeline is they're like, I had to stay in a sexual relationship with this person because I had other people, but basically I had to go and sexually service this person to continue to get grants. That's basically what ends up happening. And if you don't believe that this is happening in the effective altruism movement, go look on the boards of these organizations, the percentage of males and females. You will almost always see a higher percentage of females. How is that happening? How could that conceivably happen given how rare women are in the movement? Okay, if this was to any degree of meritocracy, these women are getting these positions either for DEI like reasons.
Oh, what if it's a selection thing because women are more likely to be interested in like interactive, social oriented roles, whereas men are more interested in like object/direct applied science or action
I
related
think that would
roles.
make sense in some contexts, but I think you just see it too frequently in this large, less wrong EA space, like given the number of women versus their popularity on boards. And I'd also note here, if you're like, no, that can't be the case, it is not due to sexual favors, well, then riddle me this. How come, despite natal women and trans women existing within a movement at about the same rate, it's almost always natal women who have these positions? The more sexual desirable class of women, because there's something in the back of somebody's brain. Sir, I can't. However, I would note here, like, why do you get trans women in this movement as well? Think about the status that can be gained versus the male side of the movement. It's just so hard. And you really have to be putting money in to matter.
Yeah, well, and I guess I don't know. I don't know that many women who are in
You want to know the
prominent
crazy?
positions. I the only one I can think of, like in terms of like a famous EA company, is FTX, and unfortunately, Caroline Ellison was.
Okay, a perfect example of everything I'm talking about.
I know, that's why I'm like, oh boy, this is not helping. Because I'm trying to counter.
Well, I
this.
don't want to name other specific companies because I don't want to call people out. But
No,
like,
definitely not. No, at least, but there are like detailed books about. I mean, because of all the legal proceedings too, it's very public. The
here's the
relationship
other
status
thing
of
that's
Caroline
interesting
Ellison.
about this, and I have some theories on why this might be the case, but within the movement, trans women are significantly more chaste and less likely to be in sex work or passed around than natal women.
That's interesting because one thing that's discussed about trans women in general is that it's extremely common for trans women to end up in sex work, just like broadly, like non-EA trans women. So what's going on there?
Well, I think that that's actually more correlated to the cultures that trans women find themselves in.
Oh, in that like they're sort of when you're a trans woman outside the EA world, it's a lot harder to get a job. Whereas if you're a trans woman in the EA world, you are more likely to just be
a coder or like engineer or like. I think that that's why. I think
also,
that
this
they
is
have.
going to sound so insensitive, but I feel like a lot of the trans women in the EA movement are Asian, and you're much more likely to pass and just look great as. Yeah. I'm so sorry. But like, I do think that if you pass as a trans woman, your life is going to be a lot easier, and it's less expensive to pass as an Asian trans woman.
One of my favorite, I remember I was talking with somebody and we're talking about like the trans woman. We're like, does we pass? And he's like, oh yeah, like a Taiwanese woman. Or like a Taiwanese twink, I think is what he said. And I was like, okay, that's a way to
that's an answer. And it's funny because it's surprising, but it makes sense.
But like we all knew, like I was like, okay, yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, that roughly makes sense. Why do you think they are more chaste in general?
I think it might be because one, they gain less by sleeping around because they're valued less as sexual partners. So the cost to them of doing it might be lower. They often got into the movement as like founders or engineers or coders to begin with. So they had alternate income stream that necessitates it less. And they often have, I mean, we know this from MRI scans, the brain of a man, they better understand what men really want and what they're using women for. And so they're less likely to have the delusion that a woman would have, because remember I said that women believe that because they know that like if a man was sleeping with other women, they could still form an emotional attachment to that man. And so they believe that and this is on average, obviously not all women are like this, not all men are like this. They believe that a man, when they're sleeping around, that men are still going to form an attachment to them. And that's not necessarily the case.
Right. They're sort of expecting reciprocity, or that they're having a similar experience emotionally.
And I don't think trans women are that deluded. They know what's up. They're like, yeah, I've played the other side of this game.
Yeah.
So they see what's up more. And keep in mind, I mean, we talk about the commonest of trans women in the movement. There was that cult recently that some reporter called us to like do a piece on, because they started murdering people, and they're like all trans women.
Oh, yes. I guess we're choosing not to name them. So many
With
people are
the
talking.
cults, the Zizians.
Yeah, the Zizians.
But you know, I've read some of their stuff. It's interesting. Like I think like I disagree with them, but it's one of these movements that I'm like, well, I disagree with you, but like I see where your philosophy comes from in the same way I see it like where antinatalist philosophy comes from.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that it is.
There is a certain amount of logical consistency that you can respect.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of logical consistency I can respect,
But a lot of the underlying assumptions are deeply flawed.
So all of this, like putting all of this together for me, has helped me be like, the problem with the normalization of polyamory is that it leads to situations that women and men don't realize they're leading women to become trapped into sex work. And remember, when I say trapped into sex work, nobody intends on this when this is starting, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a guy who's being nice because he's sleeping with a woman, and he's like, here's some money, you know, I'm here to sleep wherever.
Well, here's what's really crazy. Here's what's blowing my mind is when you described this process, you know, woman maybe who just recently moved to the Bay Area, right? Like somewhat vulnerable, kind of alone, meets a guy who introduces her to this community, who shows her a lot of love and support. And then maybe for some reason she meets more people within that community or becomes sort of unmoored from it, and then gets opportunities to, sometimes to her advantage, get intimate with other men within this community. And then it happens more and more. You know, when we talked about this in another podcast, do you know what the podcast was about?
What?
Grooming gangs in the UK.
Oh, yes.
That's what I'm thinking as I'm here. I'm like, oh my God. And this, of course, like I think with the grooming gang pipeline in the UK, there was obviously a sort of plan, intention, like we are going to begin using these young women as economic assets. We're going to go out and find them. But the same general dynamic happened organically. Like the women in this case found the EA community, you know, they selected into it. But the same dynamic started to play where they essentially first got love bombed and they were vulnerable and they were kind of disassociated from their home community at that point, distinct from the rest of society. They fell into this community and then they started getting passed around. And clearly it didn't go as, I don't think it has gone as poorly for these women. They're not, you know, kidnapped and beaten and everything.
I think it does go because it targets women who otherwise would be very high value partners who could otherwise secure very high quality men.
Yeah, that's the other weird thing about it is instead of like women who have been cast off by society, who come from abusive households and who are young and vulnerable, like it's instead like incredibly high achieving, high IQ, high altruistic, high conscientiousness women. It's so weird.
And it creates, and this is the thing that's not talked about, it creates these giant black holes in their resumes. Where for years,
right. If you have this big employment gap.
Yes. And that's why they get trapped, because now they can't do anything else. And now the type of guy who wants a long-term partner doesn't want to marry them. You know, the conservative guy who actually wants a wife.
And asks about her history or like how many boyfriends
about this. And she was like, I thought I was increasing my status because I wanted a guy. I was like, no guy is gonna like want me seriously if I'm a prude, right? Like they're gonna be like, ew, gross. Like you don't sleep with lots of guys. And what's interesting is this is the signal she would have gotten from guys in the community. If she signaled she was waiting to marriage or something like that to a guy in this community, they would have genuinely had the ew, gross reaction. Like, why are you doing that? But it is because they were not looking for a partner who was waiting until marriage.
Definitely not.
They weren't looking for a long-term partner at all. They were looking for a sexual partner. And so that's why you would get rejected for them, and you confuse any sort of rejection with a meaningful rejection. As we said, like a partner who rejects you isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could be that you guys would form a terrible relationship with each other.
Totally.
They are rejecting you because they want something else from you, right? Like they are like, you, like that's weird to me. Like it's not normal within our culture. And women are very sensitive to what's normal within a culture. Decided to ask one of our friends who is in the community and has a very good sort of view of what's happening in the community. And she added some additional nuance to sort of how this pipeline functions. Specifically, it's a problem for new girls when they enter the community. Like she says, once somebody's been in the community for a while, they either know what's up, or they sort of get their place within the community, or there becomes taboos around approaching them. But for new people in the community, especially women in the community, all of the guys, especially the, as she put it, lemons, you know, the guys who are single or couldn't secure a partner or just sleep around a lot, those are the guys who all tackle these girls at once. And if the girl doesn't have a lot of experience turning away guys or turning away attention, especially from guys who might be high status in the community, it goes very bad for them. And when women like her try to warn new female entrants, it can come off like mate guarding behavior, because they're like, oh, you just don't want me to have the guy, or they read it as something other than what it is, which is genuine concern for them. And she was saying that if somebody takes like the concern seriously, if they don't jump immediately into polyamory when they get into the community, they're generally okay. The problem comes when they do, or if they stay monogamous. And she pointed out, because maybe we gave the impression in one of our videos that the community doesn't accept monogamous people. It absolutely does. They're just seen as sort of weird. And if a girl enters the community in a monogamous relationship, she's going to be heavily targeted. And I will say, I know, you know, as somebody who's been adjacent to the community, the person who I'm talking to is not, I think, in a monogamous relationship. So she might not be fully aware of how much individuals within the community don't respect monogamy. They just don't do it publicly. I mean, by that, what I mean is they'll still hit on somebody if they're in a quote unquote monogamous relationship, and do so very aggressively, and ask for sexual favors for things, even when the person's in a monogamous relationship. Because I've seen this with my friends who will tell people I'm monogamous, and then the community, pushes them further. So I thought all of that was very interesting, that this is a primarily new entrant problem, but if you can prevent them from getting sidetracked, it's not as bad. She says one thing that really helps is you can ask people in the community, like, okay, who's the good guys who I can sleep with, or who are the guys to actually target. But she says the big problem with the Whisper Network is, one, it's a rich get richer sort of a thing, where the highest status guys just end up accumulating more and more because they're the ones who everyone knows, oh, this one's good, especially if you just want to sleep around or something like that. And then there's a secondary problem, is that the queens of this network are often people like who, well, is, an actual sex worker, right? So it's going to lead to them recommending the type of guys who are already utilizing those pipelines, which can normalize transitioning into those pipelines. Like, they are like you, like, that's weird to me. Like, it's not normal within our culture. And women are very sensitive to what's normal within a culture. So if it's normal within a culture, they're like, oh yeah, I've got to do this, or every guy's going to think I'm a weirdo, like some sort of religious nut job, right? Which is what many of them frame their lives against, because it's the background they come from. The number one background from these women that I have seen, Ayla, great example of this, but it's the other one I've seen, is conservative evangelical households. They come disproportionately for evangelical Christian families.
I do think Ayla's an important exception here, though. One, my understanding is she got into camming specifically well before she ever encountered.
No, Ayla did not follow this pathway.
Yeah, not at all. And I think she also,
you like Ayla, but I think that she normalizes this pathway for other women, because
I think the other women don't understand maybe how Ayla got into this, and her background and her proclivities and her preferences in her lifestyle as well.
Yeah,
like she doesn't have the same end goal that most girls in the EA community have. And she's very different.
Is a very unique case. I think that she, to understand a bit about her background, she genuinely had no other options. She was working in a factory.
Oh no, yeah, her life was so much worse before. So much worse.
And then she joined like a streaming site where like she got into like LSD and drugs and stuff like that. And she
joined a house with a bunch of people who were camming all together.
Yeah, and then
there were guys involved. Basically, it was just a bunch of it was a girl.
And house. She always really enjoyed sex. She is a naturally really horny person who's really interested in having sex with people. And again, as Ayla said in the early things, she's like, well, like, why would I deny men in my community this, right? Like, I enjoy it, they enjoy it, and they seem to need it for some level of like mental health. And guys will argue this, like incel guys will argue this, like guys who don't have any sex at all, like have mental health issues. So Ayla's even making the incel argument here, like, well, the lower value men do need sex occasionally or they go crazy. And this is the argument being made within like the EA less wrong community, right? So I think that, like, I understand all that, but for me, it's like, yeah, but as a girl, you have to be careful. And I think the number one thing, and one of the reasons I'm making this podcast is maybe to wake somebody up who might be going down this pipeline and not realizing it, or might be in this pipeline and not realize it.
Yeah, I feel like
Because,
it's never too late to step out.
well,
thoughtfully.
I mean, it is. It can be too late to step out. It can be very hard to step out, but I think that it's
Well, it only
easier.
gets harder though. It's not like
Yeah, the earlier you
yeah.
recognize,
I mean, the best time to do many things is like 3 years ago. But what you gonna do?
yes. And this is also a problem with things like OnlyFans and other types of sex work that can seem normalized, is that it removes your ability to get other jobs in the future or get partners in the future, depending on what type of work you're doing on it. You can make it
I don't
very,
know though.
very
Like
hard.
I remember one of the editors for our book that we just hired through Upwork, who like did pretty good work, and whatever.
Good
We
job with OnlyFans.
randomly discovered she had an OnlyFans.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it worked out good for her.
I guess,
Like,
yeah. I mean, she was doing editing work on Upwork, and it's not like
and people are like, well, you could earn a lot of money on OnlyFans. And I'm like, if you could earn a lot of money on OnlyFans, then you could get a really high quality husband.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and why was she on Upwork if she was making enough money on OnlyFans? To be
Right,
fair,
right. But the point being is was OnlyFans. And by the way, I heard some interesting theories after our OnlyFans video that OnlyFans actually got popular because people started using it to create the type of content that people are looking for these days. It's like much more creative, like anime cosplay, Warhammer
Oh,
cosplay, and like the old porn studios.
clever.
was like,
Warhammer. Sexy Warhammer. Of course. Yes. What is it? Rule 64? Like if you just provide more customized live action Rule 64 for those people who want live action. And that's another thing that people were pointing out in the comments of that video, was that many of the people who were turned off by both like Disney character lunches and by strip clubs were also not that big into live action erotic material, which same goes for you, right? You
Yeah,
can't stand this.
I am
I
2D.
can't.
I have the image of you. I always say, like, whenever we're doing like 2D justice or like the 3D women are trash, I always use the anime version of you as like my example of the perfect 2D woman.
But my point is that it seems that there's like a group, rough grouping of people that really need like the human version and are really turned on by that. And most of the Rule 64 stuff online is illustrations. So OnlyFans may have been the first avenue to take Rule 64 on a mass customized level. Like, because I mean, there's so many permutations, right? I mean, like, oh my gosh. And then make that possible and bring it to scale. That's so
People who
clever.
want to see, well, I mean, because people create parasocial connections with characters
Yeah.
within shows. And one of the things that I noted, if you want to see one of our early, very early spicy videos, which is why you should prefer a husband who faps to pony porn from like the old, like, I don't, by the way, I said in the video, I immediately, the first thing I say in the video is I do not find this stuff arousing, but I wanted to understand why people find it arousing, because like these things look nothing like humans. And at the time it was like the 5th most common category of porn was like MLP porn.
You
And I was
watch
like,
it for the plot.
yeah, I was like, what the hell is going on here? Right. And my thesis is that it was for men who preferred figures they saw as female, even to the extent that they would ignore that they looked nothing like a fertile human female. These men, because they have a strong sexual preference for characters or people they believe they are interacting with regularly in like a social context, like their brain has been tricked into believing this, to the extent that they will ignore that they look nothing like a fertile human female, they would likely also bond really strongly to a wife or long-term female partner. I was trying to come up with a spicy hypothesis, but so many people are like, oh, this is proof. And I'm like, gosh, you guys don't know what, like, no one has, it's interesting. No one has guessed what I'm into on any show I have ever seen.
Really? Yeah, I guess I haven't seen any comments that
Not even
nail.
a
I've
little.
seen a lot of really funny theories that have so far all been wrong. That's really funny, actually.
Well, no, because the theories that I've seen focus more on things that would modify my social status in a positive or negative context, because I think that that's what people want to project onto influencers is like, oh, he's into X thing that's gonna, make him look subby or whatever, right? Like, because that's interesting to them. When in reality, what I'm like, what I'd actually be into would just not modify. I mean, if people know of any unique sexual preference of an individual, they are going to use that to attack them. So that's why I don't like mention anything like this, but it's not something that's like uniquely embarrassing or anything like that.
It's not.
A great example of this happening to someone was Kenneth Bone, or Ken Bone, that guy who asked a question in the first Hillary Trump election that was seen as neutral, and everyone was like, oh, that's so cool. And so he went on all these talk shows afterwards, and he completely had his fame destroyed when people found out that he had, I don't even know if I'd say it's a fetish, but an arousal pattern with preference for pregnant women. And people just thought this was, oh, wow, what a gross fetish. And I'm like, that's like, of all of the potential fetishes I could think of, it doesn't objectify women. It's a normal thing. It's like, it maybe is, I would think, one of the least, in terms of like unusual or specific arousal patterns that could be used to attack someone. And yet it destroyed his entire fame cycle. I note here that now we know, because the texts from Elon have come out with the girl that he knocked up, that he's like, I can't wait to like come up. He's using language like knock you up again and stuff like that, that really comes off like somebody who has an impregnation fetish.
But to your point, the only fetish that is not a fetish is procreative sex.
That's what sex is for.
That's the one thing that's not a fetish.
That's the one thing.
Oh God, people. Just understand what is it for.
Sex with condoms is a fetish. Okay.
Yes.
Sex with condoms is the most common fetish.
Or sex on birth control. Yeah. Any non-procreative sex, I'm not saying.
It's like you have an active sign that this is non-procreative sex. Like, anyway. But so like, do you understand now how tempting this pipeline is for people? And people can be like, well, on OnlyFans, and as I've said in the past, some women don't have any other choice for income, right? Than this stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's where I also struggle. I'm like, well, why just not?
Well, and I'm like, these women aren't, this is my like ultra ruthless approach. I am more interested in keeping the few women who might be useful societal actors or potentially wives and really happy with that life, keep them from falling off the rails, than I would try to save the women who are just never going to be that good at anything. Because it's differential utility. It's have they decided to do something with their lives that removes their ability to be positive social actors in another context.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I would say here is while I wouldn't legally regulate this stuff personally, I would strongly shame it within our own family if it's context that significantly hurts someone's ability in a marriage market. As I've noted, this isn't all OnlyFans.
Well, I would even dissuade our sons from being polyamorous because it's just a distraction from marriage.
With guys,
it's a distraction from marriage. As soon as you encourage men to sleep around a lot after like age 23.
I agree with Z after age 23.
Okay.
But there's a whole life you live before that. And unfortunately, a lot of your status in training depends on your ability to secure multiple partners.
I'm all for, but also like you have to understand men with minimal resources, which is typical for 23-year-old men who are not either completely drop dead gorgeous or from families of means. And sorry, Malcolm, you're just too beautiful. Like, what are you going to do? And very smart. Like you had all the cards. Most pre-23-year-old men are going to like, if they try to go on their most aggressive sex mode, slut mode, maximum, maybe 2 partners, maybe 3. Like,
what I'm going to say is I'm not going to shame my sons for getting multi-ball. Now, people who don't know multi-ball in the old arcades, you get this mode if you like were like absolutely killing it, where it'd be like multi-ball and it shoots like a bunch of balls into the center of the game board. And like the reality is I do not know what social context you're going to be in. The point I'm making is that multiple partners for men does not always turn out bad. I am increasingly entering a mindset where I think multiple partners for women always turns out bad, which is very different. And here I was saying for OnlyFans, I would not, for example, with my daughter, shame things that aren't going to significantly negatively modify their dating status, like feet modeling on OnlyFans or something like that.
Well, what about, I feel like we've already gotten to a place, this isn't intentional, I think, but we've already gotten to a place where people use filters to the point of not being recognizable. If our daughters were utterly unrecognizable to anyone, but on OnlyFans, if it were completely anonymized, would you have a problem with it?
I
They learn a
think
lot
I
about
asked
social
the question.
dynamics.
This is the question I ask. Would I have a problem with it in a potential wife?
If
If I
it
knew,
came out, if it was
would
discovered.
would I, like, if you told
Yeah,
me
you
I
as
used
a,
to do
a
X,
prospective boyfriend. Yeah, if I told you.
now, and this
Totally
is-
anonymous, Malcolm. Totally anonymous.
I would care a lot less if it was totally anonymous, but I
Yeah.
still would care a degree. The reason I mentioned
Really?
something like foot modeling is I wouldn't care if you were a foot model at all. Maybe it's because I don't find feet arousing at all, but like I
Yeah.
would just take this perspective of, oh, you conned a bunch of weird guys who had malfunctioning sexual systems.
Isn't this so interesting, actually?
Or ASMR. If you did ASMR or
Oh,
audio, like, and not safe for
Yeah,
work audio
whatever.
stuff, I'd be like, whatever.
I've noticed a thing, not infrequently online, where people shame requests they've received online to see pictures of their feet, and also make an effort to not post pictures of their feet online. And that really confuses me, because I'm like, dude, if someone gets erect when they look at my feet or your feet, like, why? No one is hurt.
It's interesting for me because like I don't view it as like a sexual part of your body. So like I guess that maybe that's why I have so little like feeling like I would care.
Oh
if
yeah,
you
but what if someone else does? I guess their problem is that someone else
doesn't matter
does.
to me. I view them as like pathetic. Like, and it, like I guess like they're just like nobodies. They're the guy in like NTR porn who's like in the corner masturbating while you're sleeping with their girlfriend. Like, there is a huge difference. And this is actually interesting when we talk about like the woman on stage thing and stuff like that. While I might find it really disgusting to be giving a woman money who's like on a porn stage or something like that, if I knew some other guy was gooning over a
porn
relationship
stage.
I was successfully having with someone, I would be like, oh, he's just like a pathetic simp. And this further solidifies my own status as the dominant male in this scenario, which doesn't like, I wouldn't say I would actively get off to like sharing porn I had made with you, but I wouldn't find it wouldn't make
You wouldn't
me
care.
think more gross of you. Yeah, I'd be like, whatever. But you sharing that
It's so
without me,
confusing.
it's like you're cutting me out of dominant thing, and you are saying, okay, well, all of you guys have some potential to be at the same level of my husband.
But why would
like,
it still bother you if I had a history on OnlyFans fully anonymized? Like I did it as a VTuber, for example. That would
because
still
you
bother
had
you?
led a large community to believe, oh, a VTuber? No, I'd be totally okay if you were a VTuber.
Well, that's totally anonymized.
Right. I thought you meant like face changed with AI or something like that, but they're still seeing your real
Or
body.
like the skin of my body also mildly changed, you know, like everything's just slightly manipulated. Nothing is 100%.
I guess I wouldn't care that much if it was like actually, well, no, if guys like it would matter a degree, but the more you do this, it gets closer to not mattering. It's closer to foot modeling than it is to real like OnlyFans or even porn. And I should note that for me, like if we have this thing between foot modeling on OnlyFans and you having sex with other men for money, or you having sex with other men and then people are watching porn of that, if you take a you naked on OnlyFans, it is, and we're talking about like a 10-yard foot line here, it is 1 foot away from the foot modeling.
Okay, wait. So what would you do if you had a daughter with a really high sex drive?
What?
If you had a daughter with a really high sex drive who's like, but
Well, I mean, that's the point I'm making. Did you understand the analogy I just made?
No.
Okay. You have 2 things on the side of the screen here. All right. On one side here, you have actually having sex with someone on a camera for money. Okay. Over here, you have foot modeling on OnlyFans. Just being naked on OnlyFans is like over here for me in terms of how gross it would make a potential wife. Okay. It's not like in the middle. It's not like closer to here. It's like these guys were simping over something they never really had access to, which just makes them seem like, well, pathetic simps to me, right? Like that's not really, my wife was using them, you know, without actually giving them anything. And so like with a daughter, I might be like, well, maybe find ways to engage with that. Or if she had a really high sex drive, I'd be like, write romance books for other women.
And get really good with sex toys, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that and again, I'm not going to like force my daughter to do anything, but in terms of the best path forwards, I think that you damage enough of your value is in sexual marketplaces or marriage marketplaces, I should say, by sleeping around a lot. It's just not worth it for women, really, in almost any circumstance.
Oh, wait a second. You could just encourage them to be lesbians for a while.
Right?
Would
Yes.
that bother you? If I was like, well, I was a lesbian
The Bible's
slut.
not against it. The Bible.
Yeah, but if I were a lesbian slut earlier, would that bother you? How does that compare to anonymized?
No, that would make you higher value.
Okay, so if we have
that would make you. I've slept with like a lot of gold star lesbians. Well, not a lot, like 4 or 5, but they're like the same in status. They're higher. I'd say.
Okay. So a woman with a high sex drive,
high in status.
young.
Gold star lesbians are at a totally different level.
And I say this because we found from Malcolm's research doing the Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality that women are just a lot less moored to primary and secondary sexual characteristics. In other words, their orientation isn't really gay straight; it's more dom sub. And so, if you really have a high sex drive, the way to go is lesbianism for a while. If you have some kind of penis fetish, there are so many different types of vibrators and dildos and everything else.
But here's the thing about penetrative sex with a lesbian is a little different.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, very few lesbians do it though.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, the point being is that.
So wait, hold on. So like, God, there's so many rules. This is complicated, Malcolm.
But hold on, I'm might be unique in this, and people can sound off in the comments, but like. I've heard of some guys, and actually this makes me really look down on a guy when I hear this. I don't mean to say this before I say sound off in the comments, but when a guy's like, ew, it's so gross that my girl, is hooking up with another girl and now they want both want to hook up or whatever, right? Like, I'm like, how is this a problem for you? Like guys who get sexually insecure about
other women that they're with, that is weird.
With other women, it comes off as really I don't want to say not even beta, like omega,
I don't know what it comes off as.
It comes off to me as a male as an intrinsically emasculating position. It's like how is
I also feel like it's super strawman-y. I can't even in my evoked set imagine an archetype of a man who would be
no who does it is religious preening guys.
Oh well, that's just virtue signaling. I don't know how.
That's who does it, and very insecure guys who think that their woman would leave them for another woman. Just guys who don't.
This happens. It happens.
It happens rarely. So it can conceptually happen, but I think so I'm gonna let out a secret about the lesbian community. Okay, so I used to be pretty progressive and everything like that, and I slept around a lot, right? And one of the areas that was always the free sex pipeline was lesbians. There are a lot of lesbians who don't actually like being lesbians that much. They do it for whether it's political or personal or emotional reasons, but they really desire to sleep with men, but be able to do it without it affecting their public reputation or self.
Oh, so they're not seen as slutty because they're lesbians. You can't be a slutty lesbian.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, they want to be seen as the right politics. They want to be seen as the right whatever. Things being a proper lesbian and everything like that, and their status within the gay community and not being bi as a woman and everything. But most women are just look at the statistics. And so a lot of women for the status pretend to be lesbians, but if there's a guy who they know is attractive and discreet, they will constantly with their partner with men and my impression is this is quite common given the number of lesbians who did this with me back in the day.
Well, okay. So I guess the key for us as parents, then, if we're going to take something away from this realization dynamic that we're now aware of, we need to be really explicit about the risks and downsides of polyamory, especially with our daughters, but also with our sons, especially post 23. That it causes a lot of knock-on effects that we will walk them through explicitly, because the key isn't to say, no, never do this. It's a rule. Don't cross the line because I said so. But instead, this is a heavily taxed activity. And here's the tax. Here's the price you pay. Walk into a road and you could get run over by a car and killed. Get polyamorous and you may never end up getting a high value spouse.
Or if you
permanently.
do, they bring it up all the time. Like it's something that they can lord over you for the rest of your life.
And that's tough.
By the way,
Yeah, or that it's a thing that lingers in the back of their mind, even if they don't bring it up. That would also really suck.
Anyway, but yeah, that's what I do. You're right. And yeah. I'm
Right.
lucky that you, I mean, in a different time, if you were growing up today, would you try like doing OnlyFans or something?
No.
Or you just
No, I'm way too asexual for that. Like I'm just, you have to be able to pull it off. And I think you've got to
enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, like you need to have some kind of spontaneous sex drive. You know, it's like I'm gay for Malcolm, right? Like if in the absence of Malcolm, there is no sex. If that doesn't make sense to anyone, but it makes sense to me. So there would just be no way I could ever.
I mean, you're programmed in a way that would be very advantageous programmed biologically for many women from, a lot of different cultural frameworks. Not every cultural framework, but certainly, our cultural framework, an old like puritanical cultural framework.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't see this as being so.
I wonder if it's heritable. I think it's the autism, to be honest with you.
No, I think it's heritable.
I think it's heritable, but I also think it's clustered with autism.
Well, no, I've pointed out to people in the past that cultures that in which you'd have a genetic advantage by being high arousal and sleeping with people a lot, voluntarily, like Catholic culture really relies on that, or used to rely on that to increase their fertility rate. And I have mentioned, as somebody who slept around a lot, it's actually noticeable. Girls from Catholic cultural backgrounds are much hornier. They prefer sex much more frequently than
so the whole stereotype of the Catholic schoolgirl or the sexy nun is a thing for a reason.
It might be that this isn't due to repression. It's due to genetic selection events. That they would have historically had more children based on their arousal level and their willingness to get into early and frequent relationships. And as I've mentioned, the Catholics used to interpret the line, that which the Lord has binded, man shall not tear asunder, to mean that like if you got into an early relationship and you got pregnant, then it's not that you can never get married again, which is true for some cultures. Like in some cultures, if you get pregnant as a young woman, you don't automatically marry that guy. You just become ineligible for marriage for the rest of your life.
Oh,
because you're basically tainted goods. Whereas in Catholic cultures, even for like royals, you married that guy at that point. Not like high royals, but like mid royal. High royals got to do whatever they wanted. The point I'm making here is that this culture motivated high arousal, whereas your form of arousal is just more like dedicated arousal. Like I'm going to bond with like one individual who I already know internally, like I'm with for life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's going to motivate children is deciding to have children, not that I didn't have a condom or
the
porn.
pair bond. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that would be. Well, I could see it not being well selected evolutionarily because it seems like where we're losing the birth rates in demographic collapse is mistake babies.
Yeah.
And where we need to build up the birth rates is intention babies. But yeah,
you're
I don't
very
know.
good for intention babies.
I'm very good for intention babies, but also intention babies appear to be correlated with much lower birth rates. So
right, and we need to change that using technology.
Yes, using science. Well, it's been, as always, an immense pleasure.
And you have another call coming up?
I do.
Are we reheating some curry?
Yeah, I was gonna saute more onion and also add more tomato per your
I
comment.
would just go straight tomato.
No onion, no more onion.
Yeah, I don't think I need more onion. Saute more tomato to try to make the sauce thicker.
Okay, and then I'll boil it down for a while.
Put
while I
in
make the kids dinner.
thickening agent.
I will not. I don't put in thickening agents. I don't.
I know you
I
don't.
know you hate them.
I'm just saying don't. I like.
I'm going to simmer it for a while, and then it will be
from the actual ingredients, not from like
Totally understand, but also the second night, curries are always better.
Oh, they're always better, yeah. And you've already put in more of the spice, So
I don't that your whole thing and the Sichuan chili powder. It was tasty before, and now it's just painful. And you're like, oh, you fixed it. And I'm like. Now I understand that one chef at that Indian restaurant in Scotland who was like, you're going to ruin this. And he was so mad at you.
Because I like really spicy food. Do you want to put in a little bit of garlic as well? I think I put in from the reheat.
You want me to saute more garlic before I add the tomato? because that's
Yeah.
that's sort of how it would work. Is I
Put some
saute
more,
the garlic,
garlic in.
then I add the tomato and the rest
Or
of it.
put more ginger in. I don't care. One or the other.
There's no. I don't have any fresh ginger, unfortunately.
Okay,
Oh wait,
garlic
I think I froze some that I could thaw out, but I don't know if this is.
Don't you have
really-
already cut
Yes.
up garlic?
I do. I minced the fresh garlic in bulk, and I have that ready to go. It's just the ginger I had frozen because ginger. While you can put garlic and olive oil in the fridge for quite a decent amount of time, ginger in the fridge. My understanding is you can't leave it there for as long.
But you
So.
can even do. Well, I mean, I guess
Anyway,
the same.
I gotta
minced
get ready for
garlic.
this. I have to get ready for this bank.
Okay,
call.
bye. Love you.
Oh, thank you, Malcolm.
Good. We got to talk about how crazy this thread was. So, GSB, Stanford Business School. I get this class blast.
Yeah, his class from the Stanford Graduate School of Business still emails each other occasionally.
Rarely. Like once every 3 years, one of these goes around.
Mm.
So it's a big deal to send one. Okay, you don't do it flippantly. So anyway, we get one on the state of the world because Trump is now president and it feels like everything is unraveling for this person. And then of course you get this thread of pylons, everything's unraveling. I can't believe this is happening. And basically, you guys know me, okay? I had to come in, and I think that this summarizes what happened pretty well.
Oh God.
Good morning, Philadelphia. With us today is
Malcolm Collins,
local business owner and a man with a harrowing story.
That's right. A few days ago, 3
corpos sent me a chain of emails slagging off our boys Elon and Trump.
Now, I want to be very clear about something.
Mr.
These pieces of garbage, they don't know who
Mr.
the hell they're
Reynolds,
dealing with. So these
straight.
punks,
Yes.
I don't know if they wanted money or they wanted something more sexual. Anyway, I started
MAGAing.
bang, bang. Well, I don't see so good, so I missed.
Then, of course, I get private emails oh, but what about the immigrants? What about USAID? Blah, blah, blah.
I ran after him.
Okay.
Bang! Try to shoot him in the back. But I don't run so good either. Anyway, you guys all think I'm a hero, and I'll accept that responsibility.
Now, weren't you concerned, though, that an innocent bystander may
Look,
have...
crime in this city is out of control. Thank God.
We've got 2 presidents with Trump and Elon absolutely killing it.
I don't think one would have done it. I'm going to go out and buy some more.
Okay.
And I think you should, too. Don't be a victim. It's time to fight back.
Thank you.
But the gist is it was very interesting to read their perspective on all this because it felt like such a mirror to my own, which is to say that a lot of these people are this oligarchical class, right?
They are the man. Yeah. I don't know what if you went to the Stanford Graduate School of Business, you aren't fighting the man anymore. You've become the man. You are the establishment. I don't know what to tell you.
I burned all that reputation I gained by becoming a public Republican who's never Trump. But it was interesting to me because all of these people who had entered these oligarchical roles within our society and benefited from the existing social structure, staying within the status quo, are of course terrified because the status quo is being overturned through this administration. And nobody, it hurts more from that than people with positions of extent power. And it was really fascinating to see the way that they saw this in the same way to me. I had given up on civilization surviving. I was like, look, I'm preparing my kids for a post-civilization world. I do not think that anything close to something contiguous with our current or ancestral culture can survive. And now, given what Trump and Elon and Vance, the triumvirate, have been doing, I now feel hope that civilization may survive.
Yeah, we have
And
a shot.
at the same time, they had this exact opposite perspective of as a avalanche society is collapsing from the status quo that they knew and believed was, I guess, inherently good because it was the status quo. I can see that if you're benefiting from it, why question what's going on, right? And so for them, it's felt like just piece after piece. They're it started slow. And now it's this giant avalanche and the zone is completely flooded and I don't even know where to begin. And these are the most competent, these aren't your Democratic political class, the blustering idiots or whatever. This is the behind closed doors, smartest, most competent, vetted people who are running large companies.
Oh yeah.
They are at a loss.
The silent ruling class. Yeah.
And they're just repeating this like, oh, this is like the Nazis, this is a dictator. 51% of Americans voted for this, right? Ignoring what happened in Germany. I love it. One of the comments on the thing was like, they don't understand like voting in Germany. They don't understand representation. No, I understand. Well over 50% of your citizens voted for a candidate who was right-leaning and said that they would end immigration. And yet that will end up not happening because the center right in your country is a bunch of traitors who don't care about the will of the people and only care about maintaining the status quo and their positions of institutional privilege. So they won't side with the other side. They won't the AFD, who they need to get votes passed to handle immigration in an appropriate way. And your people will be erased from history. Period. There is no going back if you look at your current fertility rate and the differential fertility rates or the rate that immigrants are coming into your country. There's no going back. There's no hope. You don't have another shot after this. They blew your last shot. And I think that at any shot that you do have now, and this is the really horrifying thing about what the left is doing, especially in Europe, is going to look like, well, racism, right? Because the only way that they've shown the right can operate is, okay, we can't win an election. We can't win the popular vote. So what? We have to act with force now? Oh, and you've imported so many people into our country who are hostile to our cultures and do not want to see this culture continue anymore. We have to get them out of the country. Like we have to put them somewhere. And that's going to look like a horrifying mass deportation that is going to be inhumane in the extreme, because you can't just deport that many people without it being inhumane in the extreme. But now in Germany, around 25% of the population is a descendant of somebody who migrated after the 1950s. Like that is absolutely wild.
It's a pretty rapid shift in composition for sure.
Yeah, this is not about like, oh, immigrants should be allowed to come to our country or not, especially when you look at the terrorist attacks that are happening regularly now in Germany. Like this is getting wild at this point. But anyway, so, that was my perspective reading this. And it's just so interesting that I do feel like we're winning. I do feel like the opposite of them. Like it's like an avalanche of, oh my God, this old system was leading humanity to extinction. And now somebody's trying to fix this. Somebody's fixing the bloated bureaucracy. Somebody's doing things that could fix fertility rates. Somebody is fixing our trust in institutions, getting rid of the media, which had become basically a lie machine. And everybody knew that at this point. Getting rid of DEI. Recently launched our initiative, DEIremediation.com. We actually have that URL, and we're going to be working to see if we can implement these services to help make companies more efficient. But I don't know what angry responses I'm going to get for sending that. I just did that thing of opening a door, throwing a grenade into a room, and being like, peace! And
I think it'll be the same thing that happens with most urban monoculture situations, realistically, which is shadow banning. I mean, it's just... even more people who are now going to make sure that no matter what, you are frozen out of anything that they're involved with, which they probably weren't fans of you anyway to begin with. So no loss.
Nope. No. I mean, the people who want to maintain the respect of the oligarchical class of the mainstream urban monoculture, like I'm toxic to them, so they can't utilize me for anything. Whereas the people who, care about the dissident thinkers and stuff like that, I am very useful to them, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this would be great. So yeah. Well, do you want me to get started, Simone?
Let's go.
Hold on just a second here.
Oh, good idea.